He said, the folks here, you're going to have a higher microscope on yourself and what you're going to be doing and how you do certain things. And so he said, you have to make sure that you're always excellent. You're always excellent. And whether you're a person of color or not, it doesn't really make a difference. But for him, he made a very strong impact on me when he told me that. He told me his story. He had joined Microsoft over many decades before that, and at the time when he joined, it was the fourth floor. The fourth floor was the enterprise sales floor. So that was where all the the top sellers worked. The most probably the highest paid people in that office were working on that floor. I know it's only 4 floors, so it doesn't sound like very much given the size of buildings, but the fourth floor had a certain cachet to it. But he told me that when he joined on the fourth floor, he was the only person of color there at the time, and the other folks, they were in the same country club. They had a lot of relationships, so he always had to be better and always be excellent in everything that he did. And the things that he impressed upon me, he taught me certain lessons about ways to present yourself and ways to make sure that not only are you working really hard, not only are you doing the right things from a work perspective, not only are you successful in everything that you're doing, not only are you working hard in everything you're doing, but the way that you're presenting what you're doing is very important. The way that you're sharing the lessons about what you're doing is very important. The way that you are telling your manager about what you're doing is very important. He taught me the importance of creating a very special one-on-one doc that I would share with my manager on a weekly basis, whether we met or not, to highlight certain elements that he thought were important. And since then, I've refined that process and improved upon it. I actually require all my reps to use it and anyone that reports to me, and we have our one-on-ones. But it's a way for you to really showcase the work that you do. One thing that a lot of folks miss is, you do really hard work. You do great work on projects. You do great work in what you do. You might be the best at what you do, but if you're not branding yourself the right way, if people are not learning about the things that you're doing, you don't necessarily always reap all the rewards that you possibly could. And from a career perspective, you don't get the same trajectory that you would if you were taking the time to really showcase and let people know about the work that you're doing. It's not just about going around and telling people, hey, I just did this, hey, I just did this, and then trying to take advantage. It's just a way of being able to make sure that your impact is understood and measured by the organization. When people know your impact, they know what you're doing, and they know the value that you bring, you become irreplaceable. You become someone that's so important to the organization. I had a friend at Microsoft who also came on, a few months after I did, and we used to meet together to talk about branding. And he was very focused from day one on building just a purely excellent brand. And if you look at him today, like he started out as a sales excellence manager in operations, and at Microsoft he was at the time a level 61, which is middle level. It's not too high. If you looked at it in other tech companies, it's like a level 4 maybe in terms of leveling. But every year, because he always was going above and beyond, he was promoted by level. He's one of the only people I've ever known that almost every year while he was at Microsoft, he has gone up level. Not only that, one of the things that I saw that he did that was just very impressive was being able to move up in terms of roles and responsibilities. It's something that I started to, try to refine myself and try to build into my career. So one of the things that he would do is he focused a lot of his time and effort on working on stretch assignments, on making himself available to people that were in the leadership team that he didn't necessarily report to, but he could help with. So one of the things that all sales leaders have to do is forecasting. And even though as sales excellence lead, it wasn't his job to teach everyone how to use different dashboards, build dashboards for them, do extra work for him that wasn't outside of his core role and responsibilities. There were certain things that he did that were part of his core role, but he went above and beyond to help every single manager in that organization. And because of that, when it came time for promotions, when it came time for, who's the person we're going to move from sales operations into actually field sales, which is very rarely done, he was the person that was given that opportunity. So the thing is, when you think about what you're doing right now in your career, you might be making a strong impact in your current role, but how are you impacting other leaders within your organization? My personal philosophy when it comes to performance review, and it's a philosophy that came from Google, something that I learned, is it's not just about your personal impact. It's your impact on the team and the impact on the organization. Google, when they rate people and they look at people's performance, it's supposedly, I mean, that's the philosophy at least, that your performance is reviewed not just on your personal performance, what you do on the team and what your impact is on the organization. So one, you have to have an impact, not only in terms of your individual role, but you have to have an impact on the team and the organization as a whole. And when you're making that impact, you have to make sure that it's known that you're making that impact as well. So you have to do a little bit of salesmanship in that also. Now, let's talk about some general principles in terms of things that I think are very important that folks sometimes miss out on. One is just being able to dress to impress. I one time talked to an account development representative at Google that, to me, I had heard was a top performer. The way he dressed to work every day, he wore basically t-shirt and some jeans that, or not even just pants that weren't even he didn't really take the time to put himself together on a daily basis. So his brand, even though he was on performance numbers really strong, he just dressed really sloppy. And so he got a brand of being sloppy by a lot of people that weren't familiar with his work. So, his individual team that he worked with, the individual manager that he supported, knew that he was really strong, but everyone else around him thought he was sloppy and wasn't even that great. And it was hard for them to believe that he was in fact a top performer. So right there, you can see that the way that you dress can influence what people perceive about your actual abilities outside of, what they should be. And whether that's right or wrong, whether that's something that should be or shouldn't be, whether the way you dress should matter or should matter, it's not a matter for debate. The matter is, this is reality. Reality is people are influenced by the way that you appear, the way that you dress, the way that you come and show up. This is across the board. It doesn't matter what industry that you're in, whether you're in tech, whether you're in something else. I'm sure there may be some certain areas where, it's pure, there might be certain fields where it's just purely performance driven, where they just look at your individual performance and don't look at those things. But for the most part, for the vast majority of folks, this person in particular, he was sort of passed up for a number of opportunities on other teams to move on to a field position, to move into a full-time position, because he didn't have the greatest brand, even though he was performing really well. So you want your brand to match not only the way that you appear yourself, but part of it too is, it's not just dressing for the role that you're in or showing up in the role that you're in, but it's dressing for the role that you want to be in. So, when I was in sales, I would always wear a jacket. And people were always like, Muhammad's talking about the bow tie. Yeah, you can have, not everyone has to wear a bow tie. I'm not saying dress like me. I'm saying you can have your own version of what that looks like. And everyone should definitely come as your whole self, come as your individual. But, even regardless of what your style is, your style can still be refined, and you can still make your style look good. And that's what's important, is taking that extra time to make sure that you are showing up. There was an individual, for instance, that didn't take the time to do personal hygiene. So people didn't want to work closely with this guy because he always just smelled bad in the office. Now, this might not be an issue right now with COVID, but let's talk about reality. It's very important for you to smell good, to look good, to dress well, just to show up whenever you're in the office. And even now, when you're on camera, when it's with COVID, it's not as we're not showing up to actual work, but it's important to, when you're in a meeting, don't look like you just woke up and you just decided to come on the call. it's important, especially if your manager's there or someone else that could be there. I mean, the impression that you want to make is that you're dressed for the game and you came ready for work, regardless of the fact that you're working from home. You can set the tone right there, and it's very important not to give up on the way that you're dressing or the way that you're appearing to people, even in a virtual environment. I think that's been a miss by a lot of folks right now in terms of what they've been doing. Now, let me talk about the next subject. Aside from the fact of the way that you appear just physically, but there's a lot more to it as well. Part of professional branding is being able to tell a story. Just like when you brand anything or market anything, there's collateral, there's materials, there's magazines, there's newspapers, there's websites, there's media on social media. There's so many different things that you can put out there, content to help build your brand. But whenever there's a brand, every brand has a presentation that talks a little bit about themselves. How many people here actually, and if you have one, I'd love for you to say in the chat that you have one, but how many people have a walking deck or know what a walking deck is? Does anyone on the chat have one? I'd love to see if anyone does, or feel free to chat in if you've heard of a walking deck. Doesn't seem like anyone is responding right now, so either I've completely lost everyone or no one's made a walking deck before. So let me talk a little bit about the walking deck. So this is something that I also learned early on in my career at Microsoft. It's something that they did a lot there, and I sort of implemented it throughout my career. I've taught it to a lot of my reps, to a lot of my mentees. It's a great way for you, especially in large organizations, to showcase who you are to the people that you meet. I will quickly just share my screen for a moment and show you what an example of a walking deck looks like. And I hope that you all will take the time to build your own walking deck moving forward. So let's take a quick look at this. I'll just share my screen real quick. Oh, I do not have the ability to share my screen. Divya or Vaibhav, if you can give me the ability to share my screen, I can share some content.
One minute.
No problem. In the meantime, if anyone has any questions, we can address those as well. But the idea behind the walking deck is to create a presentation that you have ready when you can go and you're meeting any new person within the organization, any leader, any potential person that could affect your career growth, your career potential, any potential other manager, another skip level manager, any person that could help you in your career in any way, someone that you would want to know a little bit about you have this deck that's ready that you can then go share. I actually utilize this deck for when I had my group interview with Veemed for the company that I'm working with right now as the CRO. The first slide is basically a slide about yourself. You can tell a little bit of personal information. You have a slide in here about your career timeline. You can talk a little bit about that. There's a slide in here that I have on my leadership themes. Obviously, if you're not going for a leadership role, you don't have to have some leadership themes, but apply this to yourself, whatever would be important to talk about you, your impact, your role. I have some slides in here about some of the key numbers that I had on my performance and some of the things that I was able to do across my career. I had a slide about my key sales metrics. Metrics are obviously very important, so I was able to share that information. I talked about a why Zeeshan for this role. So if you're actually applying for a role, you can have this deck cater to that specific role. So not only can you use the walking deck to build relationships, build mentors, build your personal board of directors, which I'll go into in just a moment, but you can also use it to apply for new roles and opportunities. I talked about why healthcare. I talked about my game plan, came up with some very specific ideas since I was applying for a new role on what I was going to do to take this role into the next level and be successful. I talked about my pillars of excellence. I had a 30, 60, 90 plan. I think if you apply for any role, you should always have a clear 30, 60, 90 plan that you can share. It shows that you've thought about things. Even if it's not the plan that you end up using, take the time to show that you've thought about it. You come up with a plan, even if it's not the end plan. You've actually done the homework. You've thought about it. You've been thoughtful. People want to see that you're actually preparing for what you're doing. Here are some key considerations that I had. I had my commitment to the team slide, and that was just about it. So you all can take some time, and I highly encourage you all to do that. But yeah, so great. So Helena has called something called an intro deck. And she said, yeah, absolutely, it's 100%. So I know Helen and I went to business school together at Darden. She's awesome, by the way. And I know that this has been helpful for her at Dell and Expedia. So the point is for us, yeah, if we need to pause at some time, Divya, just let me know. We can pause for a moment for a question break. Yeah, so basically, yeah, walk and talk meeting type. Yeah, absolutely. So the idea is to basically have this deck that you're constantly improving, constantly utilizing to basically showcase what you've done. So mine is sales focused, but if you're in some other role, it can be focused on whatever that role is. So whatever makes sense, it can be tailored to whatever that role is. And as you continue to apply for new roles, when you try to meet new mentors, build that personal board of directors, that's something that you can also utilize and build upon. So that's something that I think everyone should consider. I think it's something that is very useful. And I would highly encourage folks to take the time to utilize that if possible and create one. I think it's something that you'll get feedback on as well. Yeah, so actually, great question. How do you use this with potential employers? So I mean, the deck that I showed you was actually a version of my deck that I had basically updated to utilize specifically for my Veemed interview. So for that role in particular, you can add information to whatever role that you're in, even if it's an internal role. It doesn't have to necessarily be when you're applying externally to a new company like I did. But when you're going to talk to a hiring manager, imagine instead of going into a hiring manager just having a resume like everyone else has. I'll be honest with you, when I was a hiring manager, for the most part, I didn't even read people's resumes when they were internal candidates, at least. When it's an external candidate, obviously you're looking very closely at the resume. But at Google, for instance, I know most hiring managers don't even review resumes in detail when they're hiring internal candidates. One thing you can do to stand apart from everyone else is have a refined walking deck. Yeah, it's kind of like a bit of a deconstructed resume with some pictures, some images, some information as well, and doing that as well. Mike has a great point about the fine line of being known as a self-promoter and showing value. And I think the key there is the value point. Like the key point on the individual I was mentioning earlier on in the story, Mike, about at Microsoft, the guy that started out as a sales excellence manager, he was adding value to everyone. Like every single manager that he worked with, even if he didn't report to them, he had no responsibility to them. And he worked with sales reps as well. Like everyone knew, like if you needed anything to do with dashboards, with Power BI, if you want to do anything to, do a better job forecasting, building your QBR deck, whatever type of deck that you needed to be successful, go to this guy and he will help you be successful. So he was adding value everywhere that he went. So he then became known for it. So it's not like just going around saying, hey, I just did this work. Guess what, guys? Hey, I just did this. I just did this. The only people that need to know all the things that you're doing, these highlights, are your direct managers and the people that you report to. The other folks, you need to be known and have this brand by actually adding real value to them through the things that you're doing on a daily basis, if that makes sense. So that's a really great point. I really like the fact that you pointed that out. If there's a fine line that you sort of have to draw between being a self-promoter and being someone that's actually adding value at the end of the day, if that makes sense. So great question there, Mike. I hope that answers it. And if you have follow-up questions, feel free to type them into the chat as well, if that makes sense.
Thanks, Zeeshan. Sorry to cut you. I think we missed one question from Kong, and his question was a little related, but maybe we can take a moment to differentiate between a resume, or you may say a CV, and a walking deck.
Yeah, no, that's a great point. So, on the CV, I really believe for most roles, there's a resume that's one page. So for some roles, there's a CV that has a lot more detail. I think that the walking deck not only covers some of the highlights of your career, but it does it. It's a piece of marketing material essentially. So it markets your things, it organizes your elements, and finds a way to actually highlight the things that you want to make sure you highlight. On your resume, you have to put everything. On your walking deck, you're highlighting your best hits, the best things that you've done. And I think there's certain things that you should organize. Like if you're applying for a leadership role, for instance, you need to show all the things that you've done that have prepared you for that leadership role. I had a rep that for a long time wanted to be a partner sales manager at Google. And they were just an inside sales rep. I helped him create a strategy on things that he was going to do, impact that he was going to provide to the entire organization, so that his next role could be a partner sales manager. And his next role ended up not being a partner sales manager. He ended up being a field sales rep on my team. But then his role after that ended up being a partner sales manager because of all the work that he had built into this. And he had this wonderful walking deck that highlighted all of the specific actions and specific activities that he did around building the partner network within Google. And whenever he would showcase that to any of the partner sales leaders, the leaders who would manage the partner sales managers, they were always impressed. And it showed them, this guy already knows what he's doing. He's done it. He has been successful in the past. He has a strong record. I know if I hire this person tomorrow, he'll be able to come in and actually provide value to the organization. So that was something that I thought was very important. And it was something that allowed him to eventually reach his career goal. Now, Yash, to your point on managing up, there's a couple of things that I'm going to share about this. One of the things is going to be the one-on-one item, which I mentioned to you earlier. So I'll come to that in just a few moments when I get to the one-on-one item that I was mentioning earlier, a specific document that highlights certain things that you've done on a weekly basis. But we will also go into a little bit more detail on that as we continue. Yash, if by the end of today's session we haven't fully covered managing up, let's touch on it again. You hold me to that. All right. So as we continue through today's conversation, let's cover our next subject, which is one of the things I wanted to ask folks is, how many of you have a personal board of directors? Who has a personal board of directors? Anyone? Anyone heard that term before? Chandra, great to hear. So let me ask you, Chandra, who is on your personal board of directors? Who are these folks? Yeah, there's mentor. Yes, that's good, Razi. I like that you're mentioning that a mentor is a part of your personal board of directors. And I actually have a full presentation that I go into detail on the personal board of directors. But since this is just an element of today's conversation, I won't go into too much detail here. But what I do want to mention is the personal board of directors is there for you to sort of really be set up for success. So yeah, absolutely. I'm about to go into a little bit more detail on what the personal board of directors does. So the personal board of directors is made up of a number of individuals who are going to help progress your career. Whenever you go and meet somebody that you want to be in your personal board of directors, you can show them your walking deck. That's one of the first things that I always encourage all my reps to do, is to bring a good walking deck to share with these personal board of directors that they're trying to bring on to their board, if that makes sense. Aside from that, what is the makeup of your personal board of directors? Well, there are different types of individuals that are on the personal board of directors. Since this is coming up, let me just, I have my old deck. I'll actually just share some of the elements right now, since there seems to be a little bit of interest on this. And I'll do an abbreviated run through of this presentation because I think this is very valuable. Let me just share my screen again. So this is a personal board of directors. This is the definition. The definition is just a group of people you consult regularly with to get advice and feedback. Like any good board, it's a different group of contributions. It's an informal group. It's comprised of 4 to 6 people who can help you with your professional development and help you rise to the organization ranks and help you meet your professional goals. There's no need to hold meetings with, with the entire board. The board includes people who are invested in the advancement of your career. And so not only do you need a diverse group of leaders, influencers, and corporate heavy hitters, it's also a team of individuals who will inspire you, challenge you, and motivate you to make bold moves and move your career forward. Part of this is the idea of social currency, which is an idea within personal brand development. Social currency is it's a concept that, you know, it's what you develop through your offline, online networks. Who will get you in the door? Your currency is what gets you into the door for new opportunities, someone that will continue to move your career forward, someone, the people that are on your personal board of directors will help you close gaps, go through blind spots, and provide real criticism. So there's you, and then you need people to assess you, people that can give you information, people that can advocate for you. So let's look at who goes on my personal board of directors. There's different ideas of people that are there. Here's 4. There's a connector, someone that can connect you within people within the organization, help you with relationship management. 2 is a clarifier, someone that can provide you clarity through your career, provide you feedback. That can be a balance board. 3, there's a challenger. This is someone that's going to challenge you to go outside of your comfort zone. And 4 is a coach, someone that's already gone through the same things that can help you, support you, help navigate you through that career path. It can be a peer that's in the same exact role that you're in, but just a little bit more senior, so they can give you some advice moving forward. On top of that, there's the informational powerhouse. This is someone that, you know, they know everything that's going on in the organization. They have all the information. They don't necessarily have a senior job title, but it's a very knowledgeable person who knows the pulse of the organization, that knows a lot of things within the organization that are happening. Then there's the influencer. This is somebody that helps make things happen. It's someone that comes in with new ideas. They help come up with specific things to help you get on different teams. They're someone that can influence to help you get in the door, to have the meeting that will get you the role that you want to be. They're the influencer that will influence what your rating will be so that you can be promoted to the next level and get you to the next stage in your career. Influencers can influence in many different ways. Then there's the mentor. I know many of you mentioned the item of the mentor. Of course, there's a mentor. Everyone knows what a mentor is. They help you grow. They help you build. One thing that I like to do is I like to have a very clear idea on how to get mentors. Start by identifying a role model, someone you inspire, who inspires you, helps you be successful. Let them know something very specific that you admire about them. Like I said, everyone loves compliments. Then request a 30-minute meeting. Sometimes if it's a really important person, a 15-minute meeting to get actionable solutions. Come in with that walking deck. Show that you're prepared. Show that you can add value to them as well, and you can start to build that relationship with them. Then there's the sponsor. The sponsor is so, so important. A lot of people have mentors, but very few people take the time to actually get sponsors. Sponsors are very senior level people within your organization. They can help you get high visibility assignments. They can help you get promotions. Unlike mentors, you catch up with a sponsor. Sponsors sometimes have to choose you. So you have to earn the right to get a sponsor. But they will then, if you have a sponsor, they will advocate for you. They will put you on that accelerated career path. They will help you sell your brand. To your point earlier that Mike made, they're the people that help sell you without you having to be someone that's selling the brand. Sponsors are essential to career growth in very large organizations or even smaller organizations. You know, having someone that's very influential, a C-level person at a small organization can be very important. At a larger organization, having a director or someone that's at least a skip level above you would be very important to have, that can help you as you navigate your career. The personal board of directors is not homogeneous. It's not just for senior mentors. It's not your fans, a fan club, a social club, or your friends. And it's not just there to serve you. It's there for mutual benefit. A good personal board of directors, you'll benefit them and they'll benefit you as well. And that's what will keep them going. Now, one thing I recommend everyone to do is they continue to do their brand development, their brand strategizing after today's session. Think about these 4 things that you can do to build your personal board of directors. Get clear on what you want from your career. Make a list of your most influential contacts, most valuable contacts. Understand who can accelerate your learning, and go and get your personal board of directors. One of the things that I always recommended to people was to go to your manager and have your manager make an introduction. If you're at a large organization and a manager reaches out to another manager or another leader, that manager can get you that meeting. As a matter of fact, one of my reps really wanted to test this when I did this when I was at Google. He wanted his mentor or his sponsor to be the president of the EMEA business. So this was somebody that was 4 or 5 levels above me, very high level individual who basically ran the entire EMEA business. And I sent him an email, introduced my rep, and he actually responded. And he agreed to a quarterly, eventually they agreed to a quarterly sponsorship meeting. One of my reps who was in Austin at the time wanted to move back to Europe. He was from Switzerland. He ended up getting a role. And part of getting that help was having that sponsor. When your sponsor is the president of the EMEA business, you'll get a job in EMEA. Other considerations to consider, getting exposure is very important. Making sure when it comes to performance reviews, gaining advocates. Advocates can come in different sizes. The more the merrier. It never hurts to have a lot of additional people to help you. So a larger board, don't just say I have 1 mentor, 2 mentors, 3. The larger the board is, the better. Just have regular meetings with these people and look at the big picture. Look at the relationship. Don't be short-sighted. Plan for the long term and not the short term. So that's a little bit on personal board of directors, which I think is very important to the idea for brand development and where you can actually take the walking deck and make yourself successful in any career. One of the other things that I would say is, as you all continue to think about what you're going to be doing, after you build this walking deck, go out, start to think about who can be on your personal board. Even if you have a mentor already, you need multiple mentors, sponsors, advisors, colleagues, people that can be on your board of directors that can advance your career forward. All right, so like I mentioned to you before, the initiation can happen through your manager or a colleague or someone else. One mentor can introduce you to another mentor. That's happened as well. I like the point that Yash made about making it a two-way relationship. For me, I would always try to bring insights from my business to these other leaders. Actually, the role that I got, my field leadership role that I got at Google, was because I used to meet with one of my early sponsors was the director who was later on became my manager. And we would have regular monthly conversations. And every conversation I came into him, I would try to have 5, 6 insights that I learned from my business that I thought I could share with him. And every single time he would be, interested. And eventually, when it came time for that role that I had wanted to get open, I was one of the first people he talked to and thought about. So I think it's important to plan out your career from that perspective. And then in terms of life coach, career coach, I know that's a big thing these days. Like, I know people are doing life coaching and career coaching. I'm hesitant on saying you need to definitely have a life coach or a career coach. I think what's more important than a life coach or career coach is having strong board of directors members in your organization. I think life coaches are great if you want to do that. I think that's not something that I personally ascribe to, but I think it's important to have people that can be on your board. And I know life coaches probably they charge money or something. These board members, a lot of people actually, like for me, I mentor a lot of people. I just get a lot of pleasure from supporting people and seeing people's careers grow and seeing people be successful. So there's a lot of people like me that just want to see people be successful, and they'll just do that out of the goodness of their hearts. And so, in terms of Razi's question, in terms of preferred position, I think for anyone, I think it's important to have a diverse variety of people in all different positions. You're not going to be successful without all the different board members. Like, if you're at a company and all of your people are finance oriented, you're not going to have a good board of directors. You need a diverse board of directors. Some people with a finance background, some people with a marketing background, some people with sales background, some people with technical background. That's how you get a good board of directors. And so just like that, when you're talking about your personal board of directors, you want to have a diverse group as well. Is there a conflict if I put someone who reports under me in my? I think that might be something that could be. I wouldn't necessarily put someone that's underneath you as a member of your personal board of directors. It's normally people that go the other way. So I have never really put some thought into it, but my initial thoughts are that you would probably want to avoid having people that report to you. as your personal board director could create some sort of conflict there. So I would stay clear of that in terms of my opinion. Now let's move on to the next subject, unless anyone has any more questions about personal board of directors. And that subject is your social presence. I think today with LinkedIn, you have a real huge opportunity to build a personal brand and to help you really get new career opportunities. I will tell you that my current role, I think part of it came because of LinkedIn. I think I wouldn't have gotten this role if it wasn't for LinkedIn. I didn't apply for this role on LinkedIn using the LinkedIn application process, but I was connected to the leadership team of the company that I joined because of the work that I was doing, and they saw the work that I was doing. And having a strong brand on LinkedIn is so important. One of the things I helped someone that was early in the career was I helped them to write in meaningful posts. Writing a post doesn't take a lot of time. You can write a diversity of different posts on LinkedIn, and these can allow you to be, very successful. So, when it comes to LinkedIn, I think you have to have a strong LinkedIn game. As a matter of fact, I actually have a presentation on LinkedIn. Without going too much detail, I want to run through a little bit of what's helpful to build a strong brand on LinkedIn. As we teach this about professional branding, because I believe that LinkedIn today is a core part of success to your overall brand that you have. And so I highly encourage people to spend the time to really be strong on LinkedIn. So here's some of the lessons I would teach on LinkedIn. One is go out there, create content. Don't be shy. Go out there and make content. More content, better. Text does really well. Images and videos do extremely well. When you make comments and be thoughtful to people, make thoughtful comments on people that you want to connect to on LinkedIn. Be authentic. Support each other. So if you have colleagues at work, colleagues that you have, I think first 40 minutes of your posts are very important. You can ask people to support your posts to help them happen. Let's talk about the anatomy of the post. If you haven't done much LinkedIn in the past, it's very simple. You have a hook. It's the first line. It grabs the attention. You have a story and solve. It's the meat of the entire post. It tells you what you need to have. It gives you some advice or something, a tip, something in there. And then you have a call to action at the end. It's very simple a way to make a post. Your profile. One thing that I tell everyone to do is to have a professional headshot. It is unacceptable in today's business for you to have either having no headshot, two, having a headshot that's like a picture from a wedding or something else. When I'm looking at potential candidates and they don't have a professional headshot, I think twice about even having a conversation with them. For you to be taken seriously today, take the time to be making yourself look good in every way that you can, and that part of that is your professional profile on LinkedIn. Make sure your about me description is very strong. You have some media attached to there as well. Think about the brand. Think about building a brand that's attracting the people that you're trying to reach out to. Rich content helps a lot. Having a lot of posts, having a lot of interactions help. Oh, make sure you have recommendations. If you're in sales, it helps to have recommendations from customers. But if you're not, even then, previous managers, people that have worked with that can speak to your abilities can help a lot as you build your career. Activity, 3 to 5 posts a week consistently. Make this a practice. Monday through Friday, at least post once a day. It's not important. I would say don't post more than once a day, really. Just keep it to about once a day, Monday through Friday. Make sure that you have quality comments. For salespeople, you don't want to pitch. It's important to have multiple messages and on LinkedIn itself. Nowadays, you have audio, video messages that you can send through your phone that are great ways to connect with people. If you're trying to really meet with someone that you haven't talked to before, send them an audio message. They might not read your normal message, but hey, audio or video messages are really a great way to differentiate yourself because not everyone knows that that's there. It's only available on your phone, and it's a great way to connect with people. Focusing on building some key contacts, people that you think are important to whatever your goal is. So for my people, it's sales, but for you, it could be your career. Connections based on your contacts, make multiple messages, make thoughtful, insightful comments. Don't just share third-party links. If you share third-party links, your content won't get that much interactions. Don't only do one kind of post. Throughout the week, do list posts, short question posts, story posts, all sorts of posts. Don't be too verbose. Keep it short, simple, organized. Don't write a long paragraph. It's very hard to read. Break it out, make it very easily consumable. Don't be irregular, be consistent in what you do. And lastly, don't be fake. I mentioned it before, be authentic. It's very, very important. This is around pitching for sales. It's very important to do. So that's basically LinkedIn, my LinkedIn presentation that I normally do over an hour in a very abbreviated version for folks. So I think LinkedIn is something that everyone can improve on. It's something that I myself feel I can improve on. I think it's something that everyone should take the time to spend time on, because LinkedIn is a great platform for career growth, for personal branding, to help you build a strong professional brand. And so it's very, very important. Now let's take a moment. I think there was a question earlier about managing up and how to best sort of tell your story. Like I said before, it's not just what you do, it's how you sell it, how you present it. Mike mentioned earlier the importance of differentiating between adding value and just being a self-promoter. Because at the end of the day, I don't want anyone to walk out of this and think that the important thing to do is to be a self-promoter. The important thing to do is add value, to be really strong in your role, be excellent in everything that you do, and then make sure that your excellence is known and heard of. But it's not just being a self-promoter and doing some small things and making sure that they're getting you recognition. It's very, very important for you to do the things that will add real value to the organization. So let me quickly share a document. I created this based off of initial insights that I got from my friend and mentor at Microsoft, who I told you about early on in the presentation. But this is my one-on-one template. I use this to have structured one-on-ones. And you might want to just, take whatever you think is the most relevant to your career. But what I used to do on a weekly basis on Fridays, I would email this template. It was a different version of the template at the time, to my manager. So my manager always knew what I was doing. This is the difference here, once again, about self-promotion versus adding value. The only people that you really want to self-promote yourself to is and from that perspective, Mike, is your direct management. And so your management needs to know your highlights. This is one of the things that I think is very important. Make sure that your manager knows the greatest achievements that you've done, so that, when they have that, they're looking at this agenda, whether you bring this to your one-on-ones, whether you send them to them in an email, they can easily say, hey, they just read that email, they see their manager in the hallway, hey, how's Z doing? They can easily say, hey, ding, 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 because you just listed out multiple items. I think it's important for you to highlight your challenges for your managers and leaders. They can help you go over them. I think another great area is insights. This is something that's so, so important. If you focus in, as you do your job, on coming up with actionable insights that you can push up to the business, that let's say your manager then takes to his manager or her manager, and then her or she or he then takes to the next level. This is then going back to something that you brought in. And thought leadership from the bottom up is so important. No matter what level you're at, thought leadership is so, so important in your personal branding and your professional branding. One way to be a thought leader is to push up insights through your management chain. Another thing that I like to do, this is a very googly thing to do, is to give kudos on a weekly basis to people. Manager asks something you can ask for. Summary of business is something that you can do to summarize your business. Blue sky ideas is something I added just to allow people to, share, crazy off the mind ideas that they had for the business or something else that we could then later on go into. But this is a way, think about on a week-to-week basis. If you just put, even if you just started with your highlights, that'd be a great thing for your manager to have, a list of. So every Friday, and one of the things that my mentor taught me was to ask for a red receipt. So that way you have your red receipts as well. So, if for those that use Outlook, at least, you have the ability to ask for, whenever someone has read the email, to get a receipt. So at least having the highlights in there is a great way for you to know your manager knows everything that you've done in the last week to add value. And, doing this on a regular basis is very important. Yeah, and Lauren, the one-on-one meeting update report, I don't know if you asked that question before I shared my document or after, so maybe you can perhaps clarify. And if there's something I need to cover there, I'm more than happy to go back into detail there. But my point is that, you know, if you're regularly highlighting these items, okay, perfect. So regularly, if you're highlighting these items to your leadership, they will know that you're performing, and to that point, they will understand the value that you're bringing, and there'll never be an issue or a concern that this person isn't adding tremendous value to the organization. So the next item I want to cover really quickly is just becoming a known expert and building expertise. I think it's so important to build expertise. A lot of folks, I think, like to focus on becoming a jack of all trades, or they become too focused on just their core role. But building expertise is very important in a few different areas, in areas that not only add value through your individual role, but show that you're making impact to the overall organization and to the team and everyone around you. I think it's something I highlighted early on, but I think it's something that you should do. And one way to do that is through stretch assignments. Does everyone know what stretch assignments are? Yeah, absolutely. Helen, I'm glad that you were able to find that useful. Does everyone know what stretch assignments are? If you don't know what stretch assignments are, if you never had a stretch assignment, I think it's important for you to take the time to request from your manager for a stretch assignment. And obviously only do this if you're doing well in your core role and responsibilities and you're looking for a way to grow in your role. You know, I was advising one of my mentees the other day. She's looking to become a leader. She's an engineer, and you know, her manager was actually getting promoted. I recommended to her to, you know, go to her manager and say, hey, you know, I told you in the past I'm looking towards getting a leadership position, and you know, I'd love to, you know, take your position when you get promoted. And it was funny because she was so scared to ask this question of her manager, even though she had told the manager in the past that eventually she wants to be a team lead. And as an engineer, she wants to be an engineering lead and eventually lead a team. But after, you know, a few days of me constantly just telling her, you have to ask, you have to ask, you have to ask, she eventually brought up the conversation. The manager took it very well. He appreciated her sense of initiative and her ambition and her staying consistent to the things. She said at the time, he wasn't even sure if he was going to be promoted or not, but he said, here's another stretch assignment that you can do that when it comes time for that promotion to happen, we'll be able to build these skills. So she got this stretch assignment of these activities while he was doing the role of basically, I think it was a CTO or some higher level role. She was able to then take on these stretch assignments, which were leadership opportunities and leadership activities, just by asking for them. And at the end of the day, if you don't ask, the answer is always no. But if you ask, the answer could be yes. I think there's an old saying, I think Wayne Gretzky said this, you miss every shot that you don't take. So I think it's very, very important when it comes to your career that you be ambitious, that you take the shots, you take the calculated risks, and you ask for those opportunities. And stretch assignments are a great way for you to showcase your skills, showcase your abilities, and showcase that you're ready for that next level. So between being promoted to a manager or being promoted to whatever the next level role is in your career, you want to make sure that if you're able to do your core role and responsibilities, that you're being set up to be allowed to get these stretch assignments so that you can potentially get that next opportunity when that becomes available. So I think it's very important for you to take on stretch assignments, think about stretch assignments as you go through your career as well. And emotional intelligence. Oh, Mohammed, what a great question. So I think this is key. This is such a great, I love that you brought this question up. I think that today, you know, when I talk to a lot of, you know, other leaders that are looking at teams that they build, one of the biggest things that they, you know, look for are people with high EQ. Fact is, it's very easy to find a lot of people that are smart, that have high IQ. But today, it's becoming more and more important for people to develop EQ and have that ability, because that's something that people want to understand. People that are able to see and have self-awareness, so important. Part of this is just being reflective. I think there's books out there on how to build EQ that I recommend you take the time to read. I haven't prepared a presentation for EQ today to go into it in detail, but I think it's a very key part of your success is having strong emotional intelligence and being able to show that you can not only be an employee that gets their work done well, but being an employee that gets their work done well and has strong emotional intelligence is a game changer. There is something called the 9 box, and I learned from my manager colleagues at some of the leaders that I've worked with at Salesforce. I have a good friend that's a vice president at senior vice president over at Salesforce. Let me try to see if I can find a good 9 box that I can just share on my screen real quick. Let's see here. What's a good one? Where is the good 9 box? 9 box. Oh, here we go. This is a pretty good one. So let's see if I can pull this up real quick. All right. So it's interesting because at Salesforce, their entire the way that they sort of measure employees' performance is by using this 9 box analysis. And I think if you look at this 9 box analysis, it's important to see what you're doing and seeing where you stand against this. I think this is from some website, the Predictive Index, Predictive Success. You can check this out if you want. But I'm sure this is a great blog, but this is a 9 box that I've used a few times as well. It shows where you stand in terms of potential and performance. The people that they promote the most at Salesforce, once you get to this stage of being at the top of your performance with a lot of potential, you become the future leader. The worst thing is to be in this low potential, low performance area, but new employees are these enigmas that come in, and then when they start performing, they become growth employees. So when you have the high potential, you can eventually get to be a future leader. But this is the way that if you understand, even though most companies probably don't use the same 9 box test during their performance reviews and performance assessments, I think it's important to understand that if you think about things from the way that you could potentially be reviewed, the way you potentially could be analyzed, the way you potentially could be assessed, it prepares you to be the best at what you're doing. And so think about what you're doing to show that you have high potential, and and obviously you can perform and do your key things, but do the things that are necessary to show that you're a high potential employee, one that's worth investing in, and one that's worth the company putting special insights into to go ahead and promote. And one of the people that have a lot of high potential folks is the folks that have high EQ. Kuhn, that's a great question in terms of evaluating employees using the 9 boxes. As I mentioned to you just a moment ago, it's basically taking each of your reps, if you're a manager, and looking at where they stand, looking at where their performance, where their potential. As a good leader, you should be able to understand what your reps' potential is. Your reps can do things like stretch assignments to show they have potential. That's one way to show to your leadership team that you have potential, is by successfully completing stretch assignments. So you have to do, as on the rep side, you have to do what's necessary to show your leadership team that you have the potential to be very successful. And at the same time, you have to perform. And so basically, as a leader, Ken, you have to go ahead and try to judge people on this thing. It obviously takes a little bit of time to get used to, but there's a lot of material out there on the 9 boxes. I highly encourage you to spend some time to read over those. Last item I want to cover before I open it up to questions, I know we're almost at the end of today's session. Oh, you're welcome. Is to really focus in on a few items. There are things that I've mentioned throughout today's presentation, but attention to detail is something that's also very, very important as you build your professional brand. Writing matters. There are people that write emails that have spelling mistakes, that have grammatical errors, that have strange capitalizations, all sorts of strange different things. And these people get known as being sloppy. And even if they're really good at their job, even if they're really intelligent, they're really smart, this overshadows their things. This is just one example I'm giving. But I want you all to think about the importance of attention to detail. You don't want the perception to be deception about who you really are. You want the perception to be the reality that you are a great performer, that you have a great amount of things to present to the table. So don't become known for any of the negative things I mentioned early on at the very beginning of the presentation, or what I'm mentioning right now is like, don't be known for being a sloppy writer. That's the worst thing that you can do as you start to build your career. It's a great way. It's a great career delimiting move if you want to not be take the time to pay attention to. A few things you can do real quick. There's all Gmail and Outlook both have a basically a timing thing where you can schedule your emails not to be sent right away. It allows you the chance to. Oh yeah, and Grammarly for the win for sure, Helena. I love Grammarly. Use Grammarly. It's free. There's a premium version too. You don't, but the free version is fantastic. And so use Grammarly. If you have issues, it's a free solution, a Chrome extension. You can use it on Microsoft Word. It's just fantastic and will help you not have that issue. So great suggestion in terms of Grammarly. But make sure that you take the time to review things. Yeah, no, and Razi, to your point, yeah, I think that if you do make a mistake, and some days, just make sure it's not that one day is the exception, and that the biggest thing that I think that reps need to do when they make a mistake is to hone up to it and say, hey, I made this error, but this is not me, and this is what I'm doing to make sure this error doesn't happen again. You send a bad email to a customer, there's a way to always come back from that. You send a bad email to leadership, there's always a way to come back from that. But if you're writing an email to a customer or to leadership or to anyone that's important or anyone at that matter, just take a little bit of extra time. If it's a very, very important email, I actually don't send those emails right away. I draft the email, go away for a little while, and then read it again before I send it. And so I think that's very, very important to be very successful. Yeah, and Jennifer, let me know what deck it is. Ping me on LinkedIn if there's anything that you all saw today that you want me to share with you. I'm more than happy to send it to you directly. So feel free to ping me on LinkedIn. Obviously, this whole content is being recorded, so we can go from there. Perception is reality in many cases. So the lesson of today is really to focus in on personal branding, professional branding, to make sure that whatever the perception is going to be is the best that it is going to be. You're probably a top performer if you're on this conversation. You're already doing a great job in your core role. Now to get to the next level, listen to the things I talked about today during today's session and utilize these lessons, utilize what makes sense to you in your particular role, and utilize it to help you move on to the next level, if that makes sense. Now let me pause there and open it up, Divya, for questions from the group. I'll close at the very end, and if there are no other questions, I have some questions that were sent to me that people had already submitted. I can go over some of those as well, but I'd love to give the floor to the group first. I'll pause here for a second and see if anyone in the group has any questions on anything we just presented.
Thank you for the awesome presentation, Zeeshan. I really enjoyed it personally, and it was quite insightful for me as well. Very well said that perception is a lot of times the reality. We would now open the floor for questions from the audience. If not, then we can also move on to the previous questions, so that it's also very insightful for the audience as well. So maybe we can move on to the questions, Zeeshan.
Sounds good. I will read some of the questions that I was given. These are the questions that were given to me prior to today's right before the conversation. Questions that people had in terms of questions that they had requested as it had registered. So While I'm answering these last few questions, if anyone has any others that they want to ask in these last 15 minutes, feel free to jump in and I will address those questions first. One of these questions I liked is, what can you do to focus on professional branding from an enterprise sales point of view? I think I talked a little bit about this, but I would say when it comes to enterprise sales or sales in general, not just enterprise sales, I think it's essential to spend time on professional branding. I think that all the things that I talk about today are essential. I mean, in some areas, like I mentioned, there might be a few roles that are, like you're a scientist of some sort where you can be a mad scientist. It doesn't really matter what your brand is, but you're making these amazing discoveries, so it doesn't really matter. But I think that for the most part, for even, any profession that I can think of, branding makes a big difference. But in enterprise sales, everything that you do is under the microscope. The way that you show up to a meeting, like my reps know, if you work for me, you have to be in a jacket and in a a nice shirt, whether it's Monday through Thursday. That is your dress code. It's like being in a private school essentially, but that's what I require from all my sales reps. The reason why that is as a sales leader, sales to me is the basically the picture of the organization. I'm currently working at a startup. I didn't ever force my employees at Google to do this, but at my previous startup as well as at this startup, the reason why I require you to do this is because when the company looks at you, you are that company. So if a customer is talking to you on GBC, on Zoom, on Teams, when they see you, that's their impression of the company. So no longer is the perception and reality about you, but now the perception of the reality about the entire organization. And when you're at a startup, your chances are very few. Even if you're at a large organization, if you show up sloppy, especially nowadays, and you're in sales, you're not going to get many chances to fix that. And so I think it's very important in enterprise sales or any type of sales role to always show up your best, always be excellent, and really be focused on those areas. Abhishek, I want to go to your question. Can a walking deck both replace both a resume and cover letter? So, I actually don't ever send a walking deck prior. I mean, obviously resumes and cover letters are things. One thing I'll mention is as you apply to roles, certain roles, they use like these database systems where they just like randomly look for keywords, and that's how the resume is sort of used in today's format. And they use that to sort of filter out resumes and decide who they're going to talk to. So I wouldn't necessarily say it's a great way to replace a resume and cover letter for external employers. Now, for internal employers, like let's say, Abhishek, you're moving on to a new role within your company, that is a great way to start a conversation. Say, hey, and in that walking deck, not only have, as a cover letter, you normally have your own message about that, showcase visually. Because people can, when you have words on a resume and words on a cover letter, when you're reading so many resumes and so many cover letters, it just sort of becomes blurry. But when you are able to showcase the imagery and the visual presentation of who you are through a walking deck, when you're applying for a role internally, that can be a real differentiator. And that can be what I ask everyone to do is to set up. If you're applying for a role internally, find out who the hiring manager is and set up an informational interview. And during that informational interview, you should go over your walking deck, answer any questions that they have, highlight the key items in your walking deck. I always tell people to send the invite to the informational interview after they request it. You can ping them on Skype or Teams or GBC, whatever system you guys use to have internal chat. Chime if you're at Amazon, I guess. And you basically then go ahead and say, hey, can we set up some time for informational? Most of the time they'll say yes. You set the informational. Prior to the informational, you send them an invite. In the invite, include the walking deck, and then go over. And I say, hey, did you have a chance with the walking deck? I'd love to showcase a few of the slides for you before we have this informational. Do that, and you can really differentiate yourself and make a strong influence. Oh wow, Mohammed, another great question. Influential. storytelling is key. I think that one thing that is a lost art is the story that you have to tell about yourself. I think when you're in sales or marketing or certain areas, naturally you have to be a storyteller. But I think that if you can tell your story, that is your brand. Like storytelling is what you're doing here, in a way. Like the way that you showcase and create these materials, these collateral, the way that you're letting people know what you're doing, you're being a storyteller, and you're just making sure that the right story is being told about it. Data is data. You know, a lot of times data analysis doesn't occur until you look at the data and you put it in a certain way. You know, it's funny, like you can look at polls and things, and you can read the numbers, and two different news outlets will tell a completely different story based off of those numbers. Data by itself doesn't tell the story. You have to take the data and then tell your story. So even though you have certain data and metrics, you're not going to tell the story to optimize your professional brand until you're taking the time to analyze it and showcase and package the data in a way that best promotes what the story that you're trying to tell. So I think it's very, very important that people that have strong numbers, strong data points, that they take the time to focus in on really telling the right story behind whatever data that they have as in their roles, if that makes sense. All right, and so, oh yeah, and Vaibhav just mentioned there's actually going to be a session on storytelling, so that's fantastic. So check out the Undistancing Project page, and I'm sure that you can register for the storytelling session and probably learn more about that, because I think that's definitely something that you could have an entire session on. Yeah, there you go. So we have a world record-holding popular content creator that's going to tell the story about storytelling. So I think that's a great session that we can all follow up on. Now, I can go back to the questions that I had pre-prepared to see, unless someone has another question right now. One of the things that someone asked was, what type of checks can you put in place to make sure that you are on track? And I think that the way that you best do that is you have a strong personal board of directors. And you have at least one person that can hold you accountable to your goals. The way that you build any brand or any strategy is you have to first think of what your plan is. You put the plan to paper, you build a strategy, and you execute on the strategy. And it's the same way with your professional brand. Figure out what you want it to be. Figure out what your strategy is going to be. Then take the steps that are necessary to put that strategy into place and do the things that are necessary to make sure you're going to be set up for success. Make sure that you are actually, doing the things that you're expected and the things that are needed for you to do very well in whatever that you're trying to do. Some of the other self-checks that you can do without even that other person is have a goals list. Have a list of things that you want to achieve, and make sure that you're tracking against that. Make sure that you're tracking against whatever you're trying to do. Kong, if you have a question, feel free to jump in and go ahead and just ask the question.
Hi, Zeeshan. I don't want to spam the chat, right? So thank you so much for the presentation. I think this was very insightful. I learned a lot of things the hard way, which you actually mentioned. So I realized that we actually have to display and not just work and assume that people can see what we are doing. So my question is actually more on building this network or building this personal board of directors. So the question here is actually, if we are mainly working within our organization and we actually want to network and reach out to more people, who should we look out for and how do we approach these people outside of our organization? And the second part to this will be, as we are building our personal brand, how do we balance between building the brand to people outside of our organization and also not appearing to be like we are looking for another job to the people within our organization? So that's the question.
Sorry, my kids had just jumped in, so I apologize at the very end. I might have missed the last point. Kong, I'll address the first question, and then if you can restate your second question after I address the first one, I can go back to that one. I missed it because the kids jumped in at the very end. Kong, so if I understand you correctly, when you say outside of your organization, do you mean outside of your company or outside of your org within that company?
Outside of the company.
Got it. Okay, so I think that's a great point, Kong. I think that, you know, there's multiple ways to do this. One, there's people within your current organization that can connect you with people outside of your organization that might be useful to connect with. Two is to utilize your alumni network. So wherever you went to school, that is a great way to find people across multiple organizations. Great way to connect with people that you see. Other people that I think it's important to have in your personal board of directors is, Hung, I don't know if you have a potential goal for your career or what you're trying to achieve. Think about what that's going to be and think about who would help you get there. So come up with a target list. You know, when I had that personal board of directors presentation up, part of the things was having a target list of people to outreach to that you can then go after and build that board of directors around. So come up with that target list, think about who is going to help you achieve what, and then go out there and go after them and build that board. And then the other thing, Kong, that's really helpful is to ask your manager, your personal board of director members that are within this organization that you're in, to introduce you to other people that they know. So leaders like myself, I have a lot of other colleagues that are leaders at Amazon, at Microsoft, at Google, at all the big tech companies, at Salesforce, et cetera, that I meet with regularly. And so if someone comes to me on my team and says, hey, can you help me build my personal board of directors? I want to build a personal board of directors in the cloud space across other companies. I can easily just pull up and say, hey, here's 1, 2, 3, 4 people that I know very well. If that's what you're interested in, they can be members of your personal board of directors. Go to them, take your walking deck, have a clear message, and go from there. Kong, can you ask me the second question? I'm going to get up and close the door real quick so the kids' noise doesn't interrupt. Go ahead.
Okay, thanks, Zeeshan. I think that answered the question. That was really useful, so thank you for that. My second question is actually, as we are building our personal brand on social media like LinkedIn, on a platform like LinkedIn, how do we balance between reaching to people outside of the company to show them who we are and try and connect, but to also balance it with people within our company and not appear as if we are job hunting or looking for an alternate position outside of the organization?
No, I think that's a great question, Kong, and I think it's a delicate balance. Like, I think your content should not ever make it seem like you are looking for an outside career. I think the content that you create, and I think this is something that maybe I didn't highlight enough during the LinkedIn part of this presentation, was that you're adding value. So no matter what you're doing, whatever content that you're producing on LinkedIn, it's always adding value to the overall network, the overall community. You always need to be a net add and a net addition to the entire organization. So what I would say, Kong, is as long as you're doing the right things on LinkedIn, that you're not doing anything that, like, you're posting things saying, hey, I'm looking for a new job, which I know you're not going to do, Kong, but you're looking to network with people. I think the way that you do is the things that you would post that would, or maybe even reach out to folks saying, is you're trying to network with people that are like-minded in similar professions, similar career tracks, just to build out your personal network, build out your expertise, share ideas, share concepts. I think that's the way that you do it. And you have to be careful though, Kong. So don't ever do any one thing I would say with LinkedIn is don't do any activity that could in any way jeopardize your career or your personal things or anything else. LinkedIn is not Facebook. LinkedIn is not Twitter. You cannot just, I think it's important for whatever think about anything that you post or something that, you would not feel uncomfortable. So obviously don't lose your message, but make sure that you are at the same time, staying on track and saying things that will not get you in trouble. But I think we are almost at time. Divya, do we have any more time for one more question, or should we just wrap up and I'll give some concluding thoughts?
I think, Zeeshan, it's time to wrap up. Maybe we can drop in any questions to you later, and I hope you'll be happy to take them further.
Absolutely. If anyone wants to connect on LinkedIn, feel free. Happy to share ideas and concepts, anything else that we talked about. If you had a question that you didn't want to ask in front of everyone else, feel free to send it over, and happy to continue that conversation. But Divya, from my side, it's been a true pleasure, sharing these ideas with you today. I hope this was of some value to you. I hope this will help you all accelerate your careers, have very successful careers. I think professional branding is something that we can all work on, that if we spend a little bit of time on, a little bit of energy on, can make us very, very successful. It's something that you can read about, something you can build upon. I hope you all will take the time to spend some time on it after today. And I hope that there's at least a few lessons or nuggets of insights that you got that will then positively impact your career in the future. So thank you so much for your time and your attention. And Divya, I don't know if you have any last words from the Undistancing Project. I just want to once again thank you, Veemed, the hosts, all the team from the Undistancing Project for putting this great thing together, this great opportunity for us to have this global dialogue, and I encourage us to continue to participate in it. So thank you again for that, Divya.
Thank you so much, Zeeshan. And thank you everyone for joining us. It will be great if you could also help us with the feedback so that we can improve our upcoming sessions. And of course, for any further updates, you can follow us on our LinkedIn page. So here are the links in the chat. Other than that, let me just quickly brief you in terms of the new sessions, the upcoming sessions that we have. So for your convenience, you can just simply scan this QR code for the feedback form. Also, other than that, these are the two major sessions that we're coming up with. The first one is about how to sell, and it's like a small panel session by various leaders at different firms. And the second one is about using behavioral science in increasing the scope of your business. So that's another session that we have. So I'm looking forward to seeing you seeing you all in both of these sessions. And that's all from my end. Thank you so much. Okay, before we actually leave, I would actually request everyone to please switch on your cameras so that we can click a quick picture for all of us. Okay, I'll just wait for one more moment. Okay, cool. So now I'm going to take a screenshot. Okay, that's great. I've taken the screenshot. Just for a moment, I'll reshare my screen so that all of you can scan the QR code for the feedback. And yes, for those who have already given us the feedback, thank you so much for joining us. And yeah, signing off for today. Thank you. Thank you for joining us. Okay. Thank you all. Thanks, Zeeshan. I'll be ending the meeting now.
Thank you. Have
Thanks.
a great day, everyone. Bye-bye.
Bye. Bye.